Hello, everyone, and welcome to Turn Digi, the online event where anyone can join and everyone can take part. I'm Jo Juliana Turnbull, also called SEO Joe Blogs, and I set up this event to take place today, April 30th, because as we all know, we've seen a cancellation of many conferences due to COVID-19 or the coronavirus. Obviously, we need to put our health ahead and make sure that we're all healthy. But what I found was that there was a lack of online events that were taking place. So I decided to put this together, and now we have 18 speakers dialing in from 8 different countries, all sharing their insights on different elements of online marketing. So this is the lineup that we have today, in about the order that we have as well. So we have the morning session with myself, Stuart, Ruth, Briony, and Sheri. And then we have the afternoon session starting at 1 p.m. BST with John, Arian, Helen, Jason. And when we have 2 afternoon sessions starting at 3 p.m. BST and then at 5 p.m. as well, BST. But I've sent everyone some emails, so you can all check your emails. And it's also on Twitter, and also I've shared it on LinkedIn. So we have 4 different streams all throughout the day, and we just have a quick 20-minute break in between. So I just want to say a big thank you very much for all our 18 speakers for talking today. 12 of them are actually self-employed. And during this type of situation, which we have not really seen before, this pandemic, many small businesses and those that are self-employed are most at risk. So I wanted to put this event on to help promote those that are self-employed and help to give them a platform to show their great work. And so I encourage everyone to follow those that are speaking today on Twitter and LinkedIn. We will be live streaming. The videos are available, but we'll also be sending an email out at the end of the day as well. Well, realistically, it will be tomorrow. So please support everyone that's taking part. Join in live, share the links with your friends and family. That would be great. So over to the session that I'll be starting today. I wanted to talk about preparing for the lockdown. So I'm in Barcelona, Spain, and we have seen many people, we've seen many countries actually that were locking down before us, China and then Italy. But we didn't have as much time, Spain, to prepare ourselves for, the lockdown. But now I see, and we all see other countries that are opening up, like Denmark and Germany, and how some countries have been better at handling the pandemic than others, like Sweden. So I want to make sure that once we all are allowed out and we can return to some sort of normality, what can we do? So that's the presentation I will go through today. So I'll just introduction to myself. I'm a growth marketer at Authoritas, but I'm also a freelance SEO consultant. I've been working in SEO since 2009. And actually on the show today, we have Stuart Turner, who's joining us from Australia. I met him there, and we have my sister, Ruth Turnbull, as well there. She's in Australia too, joining us. I've worked with many different people in my time in online marketing, and I met Sheri, who's also with us today, when we were helping with another event in London. I'm also an organizer of Search London, so we were turned 9 years old actually in February, which is great, and we have over 2,000 members. We won't be putting on any more events right now, but I hope when everything returns back to some type of normality, then yes, we can have some events. And also I have a travel blog, being30.com, that I started actually 9 years ago, and I'm a chartered marketer. And I just also wanted to say a big thank you to Alexander and Christina Azarenko, because they were the ones that helped put up this artwork. So that's why I just kept it like that there and on the first slide as well. And Christina is joining us this afternoon, coming from Canada. So the outline of my talk today, I'm just going to go through these 4 different areas. And it's just some tips that people can take on board. If you don't have the time to do some of these, that's okay. The one thing I also want people to take away from today is the fact that once we get out of this confinement, that I want people to be more tolerant towards other people, be more respectful, and be more open. So, embrace working from home. So, I don't know about you, but there's sometimes 2 to 3 hours per day of commuting. If I was in London, that's 60 hours a month. Depending where you are in the UK, if we look at London, it's between £300 to £400 a month. So if you are working from home, I suggest you invest in a great chair. This is one that I have. This is from IKEA. This is called a Marcus chair. It's really, really good. There'll be a link in here. The slides will be available for everyone, by the way. Each speaker will upload it to their own SlideShare. And please drop your questions as well into the chat. I also recommend a standing desk as well. I will be looking at that. I haven't found it yet, so I didn't recommend where to go. If you are in a position to help others, maybe you don't have a job right now, or maybe you have a bit more time, look at what Helping Small Business is doing. So Chris Green, who is talking later on today, he's actually set up this initiative with 2 others about helping companies that have an offline presence move online. If you don't have a job and you're looking for work, then I have something on the next slide for you. So these are some other places that you can go to look for work. Europe Remotely at remoters.net. Remoters.net was set up by Leila Solis. Many of you may know her. And this is for people looking for remote work. These ones I've seen as well. We Work Remotely, I've used them, Remote Co and Remotive. I like Europe Remotely because it is focused for Europeans. Nothing wrong, of course, if you're not in Europe, but with many of the remote working companies, they say that you can work anywhere, and then they ask you to fill in a declaration that you are a U.S. tax resident or a U.S. citizen, or you pay tax in the U.S., which I thought if you could work wherever you want, you shouldn't really have to be an American tax resident. So I would recommend checking out some of those, Remote Workly and remoters.net. So the second thing I wanted to say is that after we get out of the deconfinement, sorry, that's French, deconfinement, after they release the lockdown, I think we should really look after the environment. Okay, these are just a couple of screen grabs from a Twitter account that I was looking at. I can't share the link right now, but I will later. And it really shows a massive drop in nitrogen dioxide. What I was surprised about in Spain, actually, is that the lockdown took place on the 13th. That's when the declaration of the alarm, the state of alarm was announced. That's on Friday the 13th, so not really a lucky day. And the previous, we already saw on March 17th that there was an almost a 75% drop in nitrogen dioxide levels in Madrid. And then in Barcelona, actually, it was 45%. So I quite like this overview, if you can see. Oh. Oh. So did you see that? So that shows you a nice visualization of how actually it changed. So from quite a lot of, obviously, nitrogen dioxide to significantly less. I think the China one is quite good, but I didn't have a video for that. So some other things that I found, actually, this is from another guy in Japan. This is in Nakuru in Japan. These deers are just roaming the street. It's kind of funny. This is the M1. There you go, the M1. Going for that one. This is on The Guardian. Great video. This is 1950s. This is back to 1950s level. And I remember watching a video of my dad. Hi, Dad, if you're watching. There was a home video, and he was crossing what I thought was a really quiet road, but it was like a motorway, but there were no cars on it. similar to what we see now. And then dolphins in Venice. Look at this. This is a little video I'll just show you. Look at all the dolphins coming, if it loads. Ooh, little dolphin. Flipper. So I won't go into more detail, but anyway, the point is that, by changing what we're doing, obviously staying at home, we've seen a big change in the environment. And actually for Venice, they were always complaining about the fact that there were too many tourists, and it's true. So maybe now I hope that maybe they'll have a restriction, and we hopefully will see that the environment will be able to maintain what we have seen right now. So some of the things that I'm going to do, recycle more, use products that can be recycled. I like this large list from BuzzFeed. It's in this presentation. So things like the bamboo toothbrush and wooden hairbrush. Another thing I'm going to try and do is eat less meat, and I'll try and take shorter showers. I don't really use a hairdryer, but 'cause I can't be bothered, sorry. And my hair doesn't work with that. So I would try and eat less meat. But the thing I wanted to show you was this one about recycling. So this is a great source from ec.europe.eu. These are all the stats I've got. We're not even recycling half of our plastics, which is pretty bad. And here, did you know that there's 7 different types of plastic? I didn't know that. We're only recycling the 1 and 2 one, which are some of the drinks, bottles, and some of the cups. The plastic bags, this one, number 4, that does not get recycled because it gets stuck in some of the machinery, which is pretty bad. This as well is from the same stats. So Lithuania, well done to Lithuania. Anyone from Lithuania here? Raise their hand. I'm not, so I can't. But Lithuania recycling the most, which is great. And look at that, Finland, all the way down at the bottom. Naughty Finland. And France. Oof. So really, we should be recycling a lot more. And I hope the government is investing in more of this. Eat less meat. Did everyone know about this? The WHO report said that if you actually eat a little bit more processed meat a day, this is actually 2 bacon rashes, you can actually increase your chance of developing this very terrible disease, colorectal cancer, by 18%. Never knew that. I will not be eating my bacon. Not that I eat that much anyway. But I thought this was very useful. From PETA, or PETA, if you produce 1 hamburger, they use fossil fuel to drive a small car 20 miles or 30-ish kilometers. That's a lot. And the reason why is because of the water that's used to obviously feed the animals, and also the land too, and the carbon dioxide emissions. I thought this was surprising about the pig factory. Generates the same amount of raw waste as a city of 12,000 people. That's terrible. So some of these things that people can be taking, apparently cold shower is actually better for you. Makes you, helps you with that recovering from any injuries. The hairdryer, I thought this was interesting. It emitting 57 pounds of CO2. Your fridge emits 727, but it's still quite bad for the environment. Okay, fast fashion. I wanted to just talk a little bit about this. I do think we will become less materialistic, and I will as well. I had a look at some of these things for H&M, Sports Direct. So the fair living wage for H&M, the equivalent, and I can share this with you later, it's in the notes part of the slide. It's the fact that they actually, I think it was in Sri Lanka, they give people the equivalent of around $200 a month. But to survive in Sri Lanka, you needed about $450 a month. So even then, when they said that we offer a fair living wage, remember, see, it says only until 2018. What happened now? It doesn't actually cover the costs, and nobody wants to cover the costs. That's the really bad thing. So these are some sources and some key stats I found, which is quite interesting. This one's from a company called WRAP, a charity. UK consumers have 30 billion worth of clothes. It's in their wardrobe. That's pretty bad. And 430,000 tons of clothing is not recycled in the UK. That's a complete waste. So go to charity shops, buy from or get from friends and family. It's nice to do a clothes swap. Ruth, that's here. We can do clothes swap, but she's in Australia, so it's a bit difficult. So maybe when you come back to Europe, Ruth, we can do one. And I thought this was very interesting. This person called Lee Elcourt, she said that the coronavirus epidemic will lead to a global recession of a magnitude that's not been experienced before. And this was in beginning of March, before really we saw the massive impact. So she also said that people are going to be stopping to buy all this fast fashion. So I would say on this one, only learn a new skill if you have the time. I have seen many people talk about things like, oh, you should be doing this when you're in quarantine, you need to do this, this, and this. And really, no, what you should be doing is focusing on your work. If you have a job, if you don't have a job and you've been furloughed, then make sure that you can use that time effectively. Use something that you've always wanted to do. So I decided to put on this event, Turn Digi, and I've now learned about HubSpot. It's great software. Irina, she's talking later. She's from HubSpot. It's free. So you might have seen HubSpot branded emails, but I'm sorry, I think that's okay for now. And I've also used StreamYard. So that what we're using now, so that we have our audience. Sorry, we have Sheri, Stuart, and Ruth in the room with us. That's through StreamYard. I also think you should try out the Moz course. It's really good. We offer free training until the end of May. Just use that promo code. We got this. Ahrefs do a business blogging course as well. And I also wanted to say this one, learn to say no. I read you tweeted something about this as well before, and I think it was really good. It's always, maybe you're told that it's bad to say no, but you should say no. If something is too much or if you need more help, then you should actually say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do this, or maybe we can do it another time when I'm less busy. So Briony is going to be talking more about this in more detail, about what you can do to take control. What I just wanted to say was about, I think you should use this time to work on your own strengths. So I did it a couple of years ago. What it is we have different themes of talent. So people have said before that, oh, you're really bad at this, or maybe you're not very good at writing, so you need to practice your writing, or you're not very good at talking in public, so you need to practice your talk in public. That's going to be your KPI. With Clifton Strengths, it analyzes what your natural talents are, the 34 ones, and then you get your signature themes. They're the 5 most dominant. So I did it, and Ruth, you did yours as well, didn't you? And we had different ones. Even though we're genetically identical twins, we had different strengths. So that was great. I was really happy to see that. So I'd recommend you do one of these. I think it's between $49 to $99. So quite good. If you want any more information, I can send this to you after. Just mention in the chat or tweet at me. And really, I think it's important to really, as I said, focus on these strengths. They then turn into talents, and then you can be successful both personal in your professional and your personal life. So I asked people, what are they going to do? What's everyone going to do after the lockdown? I've got, I think, 220 votes so far. Please take some time to add into it. To vote, I mean. And this one, I just did a screen grab of Google Trends. I thought it was quite interesting to see for the UK only, a bunch, around 2 months worth, people actually looking more around recycling and online food. And then a bit of remote working has gone down. And then actually online cards, maybe around Mother's Day. Everyone likes, well, in certain countries, they like sending cards. Definitely in the UK, that's true. So some of the takeaways. Really think about how you can use those 60 hours you're not spending commuting. What will you be doing differently to help the environment? Maybe that's not buying so many things, being less as my boyfriend says, a consumista, which is a consumer, a materialistic person. Learn a new skill if it can complement your work, or you can also do one that's not complementing. Like I think Christina was talking about, she's on later. She was building a dollhouse, so she's doing something outside of work. Yeah, it's good. You can. There's also some things to do on Lego as well, and also look after you. What are your strengths? But also have more tolerance to people. Have more tolerance of people from different backgrounds who maybe don't know as much as you, who know less. Sorry, well, that's the same thing. Sorry, or those that know a little bit more. But also just try and be a bit more patient and welcoming of others. I put on this event, as I said, because people that have set up their own business, there is not really very much support for them. And I want us to continue to promote one another. It's very initiative. People are taking the initiatives to set up their own business. And I want us to support one another. I know there's this big pandemic taking place, but we can still do a lot of things online. We can still run the business, and we can still, enjoy what we are doing without the judgment of others. So I also want to say a big thank you as well for Chunkable. So Nikki Carey, she used to work at Majestic. She set up this company. She did this presentation. So some people are using it because I basically asked her if she could help me with this. And then I didn't actually get to speak at many events. So that's why some people are using it. And I also wanted to say as well to Alexander and Christina for the artwork. So you can find Alexander here on LinkedIn, and Christina is speaking later today. Christina is here, Christina Azarenko. So thank you very much for coming in today. I'm going to open the floor to some questions, and then we're going to have Stuart talk about his tips. I'll stop sharing my screen now. Okay. Thanks. And so many people. We have 43 people coming. Thank you. Naomi, Rachel, Raphael, Lucy, Luce, Amy, Yogi. Hi, Yogi, Arij, Luke, Tim, Serena. IKEA does good desk standing. Great. Miracle, hello. Oh, Arij. Read the Joe is identical. Yes, we are twins. We just don't really talk about it anymore. Wow. Now she lives on the other side of the planet. We could wear the same clothes and nobody would know. Serena, Luke, Sheri. Oh, Sheri's here. Hi, Claire, Luke, Monse. Hello. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to pass over to Stuart. So I'll let him share his screen and he can share some of his great tips. So Stuart also has his own business and he can do his and talk a little bit about that as well. Ruth also has her own business too and working from Australia, and Sheri as well. So let's give over to Stuart.
Awesome, thanks, Joe. And yeah, thanks for inviting me in and taking on the risk of letting me speak to a room of people from various places. Appreciate it. So I'm going to talk about LinkedIn, hopefully not in the sort of blah way that you may have seen people talk about it already on LinkedIn. So a very brief bit of preamble, and I'll try and stick with my time limit. 8:28. I'm watching the clock. So I've spent the last 2 years building up 2 different businesses, both predominantly only using LinkedIn, which is interesting to me because I've been in digital in various different guises for the last 10 to 15 years, and became quite cynical of a lot of social media and the way that it was all kind of being used, and the lack of sort of general value that it was adding to my life as a whole over the course of probably the last sort of 5 or 6 years. So I just wanted to share how basically both myself and my various business partners and teams actually use LinkedIn as a channel and as a general social network to grow our own businesses and to kind of, I suppose, more mindfully network with people in a way that I kind of feel is more beneficial personally than in other spaces that I used to be in a lot previously. I'm going to try and do all of that in under 15 minutes if that's possible to do so. So the key thing that I really like about the network, and the reason that we've focused so heavily on it to grow our two current businesses, is that LinkedIn currently is a bit unlike any other social networks. And what I mean by that, and within the context of what we're talking about today, is three kind of key things, I guess. So the first thing is that on LinkedIn, everyone's actually there to sort of more, I suppose, proactively and productively engage with each other. So whereas on, I suppose, more consumer focused or more friend, casual oriented social networks, it might be a bit weird if you were just constantly reaching out to strangers and trying to, connect with them and then, I don't know, forge relationships like apropos of nothing. Whereas your ability to get into different social circles and learn about different people and how they do things is much greater on LinkedIn than in other environments. And that's been a real crucial way that we've grown out both of our companies. The second is, to me, in its current state, it actually combines some of the best things of, the early glory days of like Facebook and Twitter, and to an extent YouTube, without any of the crap stuff. So there's a great mix of different content formats. Like, you can actually still see content that your friends post. It isn't all crushed out by advertising. There's kind of a purpose to it that isn't there in some of the spaces that I think you may or may not be in. And all of that comes together really nicely if you manage to kind of curate your presence in a way that sort of speaks to whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And the third thing, which I think is potentially overlooked, is that you can actually just use it as a social network. Like, it's not all boring, business people just looking for jobs. Like, I know a lot of people on there who purely use it just to actually socialize as you would in any other network. That side of it, I think the more casual side is a bit underrated. And there's a lot of like LinkedIn police type people who will try and tell you that, it's not Facebook and you can't be unprofessional on there. But I would actually take a bit of umbrage with their attitude. And I think you can be fairly casual if that's who you are. And I think if you wrap all those things together, it's just a really positive, kind of interesting network to be involved in. So if you're on there already, hopefully you'll be able to share some things you can do to sort of more mindfully, I guess, use your time on the network. Back to Joe's point about what can you do with all that extra spare time that you have if you're not commuting places. Well, this is a great way to spend some of that time. And the second thing is how you can tangibly turn it into ways that you can actually, commercially help yourself or your business. In particular, if you're out of work at the moment and you're trying to get back into it, or if your business is struggling or whatever it is, it's a great space to address those challenges. So that's the general kind of context. Without going into the boring side of this, I think the massively overlooked side of LinkedIn currently is not just that it's a massive database that's free and open to anybody of potential customers, partners, leads, whatever. That's the first thing that people tend to overlook. The second thing is that if you were still laboring under the impression that it's like a job board and just full of hack recruiters who are going to be there trying to fish around to sort of, place you for roles, it's really transitioned from that into a sort of closer to being a proper professional social network. So over the last year or so, this is from LinkedIn's own stats, so read into that what you will. Their network has had apparently 15 times more content impressions than job postings, which I think was like last year or the year before. So obviously that kind of speaks to the fact that there's a lot more content being published there, and it's not just people looking for jobs. There's a lot of like interesting opinions, company news, thought leadership stuff that happens. There's a lot of crap stuff as well, but obviously you can avoid that and look for the good stuff. The second thing is that engagement is increasing on the network, which I found quite interesting because engagement's been decreasing or pretty flatlined across a lot of the other social networks. And unless it's an emerging one, like, you've obviously got like newish entrants like TikTok where they're still in their embryonic stages and, like engagement's really high because it's quite new. A lot of the more mature networks are struggling to keep people coming back. And LinkedIn are in a good position, again, currently where that isn't the case, which is interesting. And the third thing, again, just as I was saying, is like it's quite a genuinely different environment to be in because everybody's there for professional reasons, not just to sort of post, photos of what you were doing. Well, obviously not doing a lot recently, whatever weird lockdown activities you've been engaged in. If you've done, the pillow fashion challenge or whatever, that's not happening on LinkedIn. People are still trying to do work there. So back to my original point, if you're trying to do work in a social environment and you might want to have some social stuff as well as some work stuff, it's like the ideal place to do that. So that's why we spend a lot of time there. And both of our businesses obviously are heavily sort of involved in using it as well. I'm going to try and talk through quite a few things in quite a short amount of time. So if anyone has any questions about this, obviously you can have an opportunity to have a quick chat at the end of this, or I'll leave my contact details as well if you want to chat further. But the way that we use this in a hopefully short but informative manner is on the organic side, mindful networking. So if you're spending time on LinkedIn, and I've obviously encouraged this on any social network, but it's just easier on LinkedIn, and you want to either achieve some kind of objective for yourself or your business, or you just want to get exposed to different points of view and, sort of move in different circles, it's very easy to do that. So going back to what I was saying at the start, people are generally fairly open to connecting with other people on the network. And we do this ourselves a lot, where obviously we're trying to connect with people who I would not necessarily want to go out and, be friends with or have a drink with, or they probably wouldn't really want to do that with me, is more likely the real scenario. But for work purposes, we might have a really fruitful relationship. So in order for me to learn about those people and get to know them, I can connect up to them. I can see what they say. I can see the things that they publish, and I can kind of curate the people that I spend my time with in that space in order to move into a sort of different environment, both mentally and from a professional point of view. So I think this is a really overlooked but incredibly powerful thing that you could be doing. And the other key side of this is obviously just removing people that are not relevant anymore. So this is one of those really big distinctions between LinkedIn time for me and other social networks, where, on like Facebook and Twitter and wherever else, where your network might grow quite organically and quite naturally based on your friend group or people that you connect with who share interests, or that person who left a funny comment on something that you thought you might meet but you never did, whatever. Those people are not necessarily the people that you want to see content from, or kind of interact with from a work or professional point of view. So removing people and keeping only the people you want to see allows you to really curate the things that you then are exposed to, which allows you to learn a lot more about the kind of people that you want to be spending time with. And that's super easy to do. That's just a case of go in every day, connect with a few people that might be potential customers, potential clients, you're looking for funding, whatever it is, and see who connects, see what they say, learn about them, and remove a few people who you don't interact with. And it's quite easy to do that. And it's a sort of very low bar, but really high value piece of activity that you can do. It might take you like 5 minutes a day, but will have massive results. So that's number one, mindful networking. Number two, content marketing really works on LinkedIn. And I think that's partly because a lot of the content's pretty boring. So the bar's fairly low if you're trying to dive in there. And the second is that it's really easy to kind of showcase who you are and lead with you as a person before you start talking about your company or your job or whatever else it is you're doing. And LinkedIn, just from a purely functional point of view, have actually got quite a nice mix of different posting formats and ad formats at the moment that work really well within the network. So it's in a nice space where there's some nice rich media options. You can do posts and surveys, as Joe's done to gather some data for her intro here. You can drive actions in a nice way that all sits really well within the feed, so it's not all like divisive or really disruptive when you see it. So that stuff's really awesome. And I know a few people, so a couple of my now new LinkedIn friends who are in the UK in various places who are doing some really, really awesome content marketing work that just really nails certain audiences and personas that works super well. So I definitely encourage you to test stuff and just see what works and what doesn't. It's easy, and all it takes is a bit of time for you to knock something together. So that's the second one, the kind of one-to-many. And then the third thing is direct outreach. So obviously I've kind of covered this a bit already, but your ability to reach out to people and then message them directly is, again, incredibly powerful. So the best example I got from this was actually in I think it was a workshop we ran last year, where a sales guy who was in this workshop, I was asking him why he thought LinkedIn was so great, and he was like, he's a Scottish guy. I won't try and do the accent, but he was like, look, Stu, the reason that I really like this is imagine I'm knocking on the door of a building somewhere. I'm trying to speak to the CEO. He's 40 floors up. He's got about 5 people between me and him. He's never going to let me in to see him because he'll be like, who the hell's this sales guy? I don't want to talk to him. Whereas on LinkedIn, I can send him a message, reach out to him directly. He's probably going to connect to me, and then I can talk to him with none of the hassle. Don't have to leave the house. I can kind of sit at my desk doing whatever I normally do and be able to speak to this guy that I'd never be able to talk to in real life. Which may sound very obvious, but to me that really brought home the kind of power of just reaching out directly and having a chat with people. So that in itself is super powerful as well. And again, all it requires you to do is sit at your desk and send a few messages. So this is super easy stuff that you can obviously test yourself and have a play around with. So that's the organic side. There's a lot more to kind of go at, but hopefully that's giving you a bit of an idea of what you can start to look at. If you couple that with the paid side, so if you've got a bit of money to put towards promoting what you're doing, either for yourself or for your business, there's a few key things that we use all the time that I would strongly recommend you do as well. The first of which is buy a Sales Navigator seat. So I'd just like to preamble this by saying I'm in no way affiliated with LinkedIn. I just really like the tool. So Sales Navigator is one of their paid tools. It's about 100 of whatever your local currency is, wherever you are, per month. But it allows you to build loads of really powerful dynamic lists and static lists and segment the LinkedIn database in a really, really powerful way, which I'll talk about in a second. But it's like probably the best $100 we spend for our team in the agency business I'm in. Out of everything we do, it just like gives you a really insightful way to break down everybody on the network and be really, really specific about who it is you're trying to reach, and then be able to learn a lot about specific subsegments of people. Boosting content works super well. So you can build very, very specific audiences on LinkedIn. So if you imagine back when, Facebook was actually useful for something back in the day, the tool to do this stuff, the campaign manager, is super clunky. It's like the worst thing I've ever used, but the audiences you can build are amazingly specific. So if I wanted to just, reach out to a few thousand people who are just in certain roles in a certain area at certain companies, I can do that on LinkedIn, and I can make it look like I'm everywhere. I can reach out to them directly. I can send some content their way. I can get them to follow my company page. It's all like super easy to do. And you're not talking like mad amounts of money. You can probably spend $500 to $1,000 over the course of a couple of months and be able to generate some pretty decent exposure. And then finally is just the advertising side. So this is probably the least exciting, but it's still useful. The ad formats, just to generally push your brand or yourself out across the network, are still really useful. And the balance between the paid and organic exposure is still quite good. So depending on how much they mess around with that over the course of the next 12 to 24 months, that may change. But for the foreseeable future, it's a great time to play around with all of these options, which you can do either for yourself or for your business, or for your clients or whatever. So in very short order, that's how we approach looking at these things. And the overarching approach we take, which I think works really well, it's kind of two sides to this. The date before you marry approach. So, as much as maybe we would like our lives to be like an episode of Maths where you can just kind of dive in there and you're straight into the marriage and you can skip all the preamble, nobody really likes getting like the cold, no context, hard sell outreach message, right? Like it just, it's horrible, basically. I don't think I need to go into that in any great detail. I'm sure you've all seen examples of this happen. So if you pull together all of that stuff that I was just talking about and actually take the time to learn about people before you start to get them to try and do something, and put yourself in their shoes, the customer shoes, the prospect shoes, whatever, connect with them first, see what they post, see what they're saying, engage with them a bit, see if it might be relevant. Don't just try and make a social network do your entire sales job or your entire marketing job. It's just not very realistic. Just mapping stuff out in a realistic time frame. I mean, people used to do this. Maybe I'm just getting a bit old and miserable, but like I kind of feel like this has drifted away a bit, and everyone's just going straight for the kill in a lot of marketing and sales activity now. And just being a bit more sensitive and empathetic, and particularly now, obviously, when everyone's going through a fair amount of change, and some people are not necessarily as comfortable in the current environment as those of us who've lived their lives on the internet for as much of it as you could. It just, will generate much better results. So just don't rush and get to know what people might want first before you're trying to start to tell them about what you think they will want. The next thing is segment everything. So take a leaf out of product marketers' books and just get really, really specific and test specific segments. So I'll give you an example of this that we're working through right now in my agency business. So we're just testing a variety of new segments to go out with our latest campaign. We're going to rebrand in a month. We've got to launch all that stuff. We've just built 8 specific segments across 4 markets that only covers one business type that we're trying to reach. And we're going to basically set a campaign live that incorporates all 8 of those segments. It's going to have specific elements of every one of those things that I just talked to you about. So there'll be some direct outreach stuff, there'll be some posting, there'll be some creepy professional grooming, there'll be some digital PR type stuff, but it'll all be very specifically focused to a group of people. I think no more than 2,000 or 2,500 people in 4 different countries, so around 10,000 in total. But the way that we're going to run that campaign is exactly how I just described. So we're going to stalk them up first. We're going to get to know who they are. We're going to see what they post about everything. We're going to connect with them, and then we're going to share some of our things, and then we're going to see what happens then. And then if that all seems to be going in the right direction, in about 4 to 6 weeks' time, we might start trying to get them to do something. But even that's quite a compressed kind of a timescale, but that's all going to be done just on LinkedIn. And then what we're going to use LinkedIn to do is try and take those conversations offline as quickly as possible. So that whole initial outreach, get to know each other, have a good time, hopefully, maybe get a second or a third date type approach. All that's going to lead to is a phone call or possibly someone visiting a landing page, and then they'll drift into the rest of our ongoing, sales and marketing cycle. So that, you can apply to you as a person, you can apply at a business level. The sort of theory holds whatever you're trying to do with it. But we've seen massively impressive results from this whole approach over the course of the last 2 years. And the reason that we can do that so, I guess, successfully is going back to Sales Navigator, just crazy filtering. So this is, if you haven't used this tool before, this is a screenshot of I think if most of the filters that you can apply across the network. So this is quite small, but I think Joe's showing the slides afterwards. But you can see there's an incredible array of different ways you can start to build out different people that you could get to know. So again, going back to what I was saying at the very start, even if you just want to reconnect with people that you might have gone to uni with, for example, I've done this quite a lot. Don't think I'm weird. I'm going to share a few things that I do on LinkedIn, which might sound a bit odd, but they work. They're for professional reasons. So even if you just want to find people that you maybe went to uni with, you can do that. You can find alumni from your uni. You can find alumni from your uni and course. You could find people that went to the same school as you. You could find people that have worked in the same area. You can find friends of friends who went to the same uni that you went to. There's a million ways that you can create a warm intro to people. And if you just want to break out of as I was saying earlier, a certain sort of cycle of working, or you're trying to get in front of a new audience for whatever reason, or even if you're trying to get back into work, I would say steer clear of LinkedIn's recruitment tools and their standard job posting and use this instead, because this will get you much better results because you can start those relationships yourself directly. So I won't belabor this. Happy to sort of follow up and chat about how we filter things and do stuff. I've got a few resources I can share that expand on all of this, but this is super powerful. And if you sat around at home and you got a spare half hour, you can get a free trial, I think, of Sales Nav for 30 days if you've never used it before. So you can just have a play around and see what you can do with it. But we use this all day, every day for both ourselves and our clients, and it's super powerful. So that was it. Hopefully almost on time. So yeah, if you'd like any further information, or if you have any questions about any of that, just hit me up at this email address or on LinkedIn is probably the fastest way. Always happy to have a chat and help people out. And yeah, hope you found that useful.
Great. Thank you very much, Stuart. Yes, there's a few questions that some people had in the audience. A question from Sarah. Is it worth having a LinkedIn Premium as a freelancer?
I would say definitely. So Premium is a bit of a halfway house between the free version and what I just showed you from Sales Navigator, but it gives you some of the more advanced filtering and search functionality. So I would definitely recommend investing in them, but obviously you need to then make sure that you're using them. So I'm sure you would, but don't just buy it and do nothing with it, obviously. But it's well worthwhile. The free search functionality and filtering is pretty clunky and not very useful if you want to kind of do things at a bigger scale.
Okay, great. All right, so that's one. And also maybe we have some questions from Ruth or Sheri if you guys want to ask anything. But I'll just at this moment ask one from Samantha. What is the role of a business page? Does it really have one, or would you keep everything away from personal pages?
Really good question. Yeah, so we do use business pages as well. So our whole sort of shtick within our agency is people first. So we focus very heavily on peer-to-peer. So everything's led typically from people before the brand. But there's certain things that you can only do from a company page. So a lot of the paid content boosting formats are only available through company pages. So the magic kind of happens where you just need to understand, you know, the interplay between the two. And if you really want people to connect to you first and foremost, then use your company page to drive more connections rather than followers of the page. If you want to, you know, create more general brand awareness and sort of build that awareness more broadly across the network, I would say build both together and just push the company page just as hard as the individuals. But yeah, they both got value. It kind of depends what you're trying to achieve. But I wouldn't say don't have one. But our preference would always be to go with the individuals first and don't worry too much about the company page unless you want to specifically use the things that you can only do with that.
Okay, great. And I just want to ask another question from Zul. So Zul Karnain Shafi, Ruth and I went to school with him when we were at St. Moore in Yokohama, Japan. So Zul, thank you for coming. And Zul has a question about LinkedIn in SC and SIA. I think that means paid search, maybe? I don't see too many Indonesian decision makers that are active on it. So what about LinkedIn search engine ads? I think that is.
Okay, so that's interesting point actually. So the challenge with LinkedIn at the moment is it's grown largely, obviously originally being born in like a, you know, white Western market, following English speaking kind of white Western markets initially. It's expanding out beyond that now across various other areas and into other languages and more across, so I suppose, what you would call some of the more emerging markets from my time in media. However, if you don't see a lot of the key decision makers that you're trying to reach on there, one of the ways that we use the network is we build what we call like buying groups within our target customers. So typically for the kind of businesses we're trying to win, there's between 6 and 8 people that we're going to need to engage to be brought on board. So if you don't see the ultimate decision-making person, get as close as you can to them on the network and then try and work out where you can find that person. So to give you an example of that, like a really crude one, if you're trying to speak to the CEO of a business, but you can only get in touch with potentially like their EA or PA, right? That EA or PA has the ear of the CEO. So if you can get connected up to the EA, they're your route in. So even if that CEO is not on LinkedIn, if you can get connected and get friendly with the EA, they can do the introduction for you. It just might not happen on the network. It might happen somewhere else. And that's where it's just really important to bear in mind that no one channel or tool can do your whole, you know, shebang for you. It's only one part of a larger process or thing that you're trying to achieve. But there's definitely a way to get in there.
Yeah, sorry, CEA, I was looking, I thought there was search engine ads, because sometimes in Australia they refer to it as that, or in other countries, but it's Southeast Asia, so sorry. So Azul was talking about, what about LinkedIn in Southeast Asia? I don't see too many Indian
yeah,
Indonesian
I mean,
active on it.
I would say, I suppose, just as a full stop to that, like LinkedIn is growing everywhere. So if they're not on there now, it's possible that they will be on there soon.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much, and thanks very much, Zul, for dialing in. Okay, well, we're gonna pass over to Ruth. That she will talk about her. She's got a good presentation lined up for everyone. Excuse the noise and someone's drilling downstairs. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I'll just pass over to Ruth. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Oh, share screen. There we go. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Oh, here we go. Here's the start of the presentation. My name is Turnbull. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to Joe for asking me to be involved. I started working fully in digital marketing 9 years ago, and I've been working as a freelancer for about 7 years. For the past 2 years, 2018 and 2019, I've been working solely from home and from TAFE. I've been studying at TAFE, studying a certificate 4 in web-based technologies, how to build websites, and I've been working freelance.
Sorry, can you explain what TAFE is? So no, it's non-Australian.
Oh, TAFE. Oh, sorry. TAFE is college. TAFE is a college that you can go to. It's a vocational college institution where you can learn key skills like to become an electrician, to build websites, there's a number of courses actually at TAFE. And and so I went there for 2018 and 2019. And studied how to build websites, learning programming languages. And while I was there, I was also working freelance. So I developed some skills in 2018 and 2019 about working more from home. And this is me on my website. So I blog about wine because I studied wine as well. I blog when I can on my own site. It's not as up to date as other people's sites because I don't pay me to blog. But it does have some interesting information actually about the current pandemic. So this presentation will actually be potentially less than 10 minutes. Let me just time myself. And I'm going to be talking about a few things about how to work effectively from home. When my sister Jo asked me initially to do this, asked me to be involved, I initially wanted to share some tips and advice about working from home from what I had developed over the years. However, with so many of us now working from home because of the pandemic, you probably all have some tips and advice that you'd like to share, and I'd really like to hear about that at the end of the session. It'd be great in the chat, or if people want to leave comments, that would be wonderful. So during the next 10 minutes, I'll cover who works from home, what makes an office, how to work effectively at home, really appreciating that working from home is hard, and tips and tricks actually from around the world. I've asked some friends to actually give me some of their tips and tricks, those who've never worked from home before. I thought that would be insightful. So here we are. Leading this presentation about working from home, I felt it was important actually to start with really understanding who works from home. So being based in Australia, I just looked at a few facts and figures, and it was quite interesting to learn that from September 2016, about a third of Australians are regularly working from home. At this time, it equated to about 3.5 million. As of November 2018, there's actually about just over 12 million Australians employed. And if this Gartner HR survey is correct, where 88% of organizations have encouraged people to stay at home, obviously during the pandemic, that's about 11 million people. If you look at the UK, I talk about the UK because there's a lot of us, I think, based in the UK. Not me, but a lot of people, I think, tuning in are based in the UK. And I thought it was actually interesting because there's a huge population, about 65 million, I believe, and 32.6 are in the workforce. And if you think about now, a large majority of those now working from home, well, that's a lot of people. That is a lot of people working from home. So on to my next question, or my next slide, really. It's more about what makes an office an office. So working from your home. So a table, chair, quiet space, a plug, obviously, for electricity, headphones, internet connection, a view, if you can, of out in your garden or out in the front yard. Joey talked about a desk that changes in height. Well, I actually think that an ironing board could do a similar job. So a table that adjusts in height, and there's some great options out there, and there's some very good reasons to have it, because you want to stand up, stretch your back, it's good for you. But really, from my own experience, an ironing board is pretty much the same thing, and it doesn't cost anything, because no doubt most of us have an ironing board at home. So I found past 2 years, I lived in a kind of a new built house where the only outside view was from my bedroom window. And for those 2 years, I realized that actually the time spent studying and working from home, I really needed a view. And so I decided to take my ironing board into my bedroom and set it up as a desk. So you can kind of see my leg there, and you've got my ironing board there and my mouse. So it was just very important for me to have a view. everyone has their thing, but for me to keep motivated, I needed to have a view. So for many months, that ironing board was used for my work and my studying. It was not used for ironing. So how is it possible to have an effective day working from home? Well, I've put this together, some tips here, and I really feel that looking after you and your mental health is important. So what is mental health? One article I read stated that mental health included our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Well, for me, part of this is being ready mentally for work. For me, if I'm ready and dressed for work, then I feel I'm in the zone to do work. As if I was in an office and chatting to colleagues and mentally prepared versus if I was, staying in my pajamas all day. Plus, I don't want to get caught out and be on a Zoom call and then set up realizing when it's too late that I'm in my jogging bottoms or pajamas. It's just not a good look. I don't know if anyone saw that on I think it was on the news recently, that U.S. presenter Will Reeve of Good Morning America. He was caught out wearing some very short shorts or perhaps his underwear. He had his suit on up the top and was wearing some very short shorts on the bottom. Anyway,
Yes,
they could be very short shorts.
And I also wanted to say, sorry, about people taking Zoom calls and things like that, going to the bathroom and not closing that camera. You shouldn't do that.
Yes.
Would you have a meeting in the
No.
bathroom?
No, exactly. And just a few pointers here about working effectively. For me, anyway, I plan my day. Past 2 years, I've been planning my day the night before. I find it handy to write it down in a notebook before I go to bed. My handwriting is actually getting pretty bad, so I need all the help and practice I can get. Breaking down your day to 30 to 45 minute slots. I really have found over the years that I'm more effective in 30 to 35 minutes versus giving myself a task to complete over 2 hours. I know I'll lose focus over 2 hours and it's just not effective. I'll give myself the same amount of time for lunch as well, 45 minutes or so. In terms of making time for exercise, it's so important. I need to start the day by stretching and then ideally doing some exercise. Past couple of years, I've been swimming in the morning. More recently, obviously, cycling. Can't really swim anymore in a pool, that is. Then after breakfast and a coffee, past couple of years, just getting then straight into work on the computer. Exercising in the morning for me energizes me, which actually helps carry me through the day. We all probably know why exercise is good for us. I mean, there's been so much study out there on why it's good. There's benefits like it can help you deal with depression. It can help you deal with anxiety and stress. There's obviously so many other benefits. It helps your mental well-being and improves your concentration, your motivation, your memory, and your mood. There's so many benefits of it. Plus, you do exercise, you lose weight, and then you can feel okay about having a cookie. That's what I find anyway, or some ice cream. So having screen-free time, I find this is so important. So just step away from your desk, step away from that light, and just have a snack outside, have your lunch outside. Even if it's cloudy, you need that sun or that cloud on your back. It just really helps adjust your eyes. That helps you kind of take that time away from the screen. And it just, for me, it's just so effective. If I don't take any free screen time away from the laptop, then I find I have a terrible headache in the afternoon and evening. And in terms of being realistic in your outcomes, well, there is a limit. It depends what people's expectations are. But working 9 to 5 in an office, you might be actually more effective at home. But actually, you might find that there are a lot of distractions at home as well. So you need to be realistic in your outcomes. Arranging video calls with colleagues and clients is very important. I actually think that would benefit in terms of saving time from emails. If you actually have a chat with someone as opposed to emailing, you also could get that connection that you don't have at the moment because of COVID-19, and also that save that time with all the emails. So appreciate that working from home is actually hard. No one except you'll be interrupted a lot. Well, I have to be, and I try mentally to be prepared to be interrupted. I know that, especially the past couple of years, working from home, that I know that I would have unfinished work by the time I logged off, and accept that I'll be frustrated that if I need to understand, I need to appreciate that I will be frustrated if I don't accept the challenges of working from home. So this is just important to accept our current situation. So with the distractions, there were distractions at home all the time. There are different ones to work. You don't have people coming up to you asking you about your weekend, which is lovely. But if you have to a deadline, it can be time consuming. Interruptions. There are no colleagues, as I said, but other people in your house might come to your desk. Smaller people might come and visit you and not understand what no means. Smaller people being
Oh,
children. I mean,
who could that be? Sorry. Who could that be
children.
coming? Oh,
Small
children.
children. Children,
Okay.
yes, small children. Yes. Isolation. So be aware that you may feel isolated. It is just you and you and your household, and perhaps your flatmates um, or partner, family. But you don't have that chat with a barista in the morning when you get your cup of coffee. You don't have that chat with someone at Kohl's or Tesco or supermarket when you grab your lunch, or the cafe when you grab your lunch. The other important thing is to know your limits and to ask for help. So in the past couple of years, friends were offering to look after my child, for example, so I can get some work done. I would say yes, thank you. Um, Obviously now we can't do that, but you can get help online if for your mental well-being. I've learned about that. There's actually in Australia, you can there's the telehealth services. So there's a lot of help that you could actually get if you need it. Obviously, it's online. And the final thing really here is just to turn off your computer, switch off your mind, and just tidy up. You need to learn to just walk away. Working from home could mean that you're working more hours, but not as effective hours than in the office if you let it get into you. You need to understand that your desk at the end of the day, when you log off, could be quite messy like this, with some beers and some tea, as this person has there. But that's okay. You just got to switch off and walk away. You need to have that downtime. It's so important to have that downtime. So, as I said, a few people have come back to me, some of my friends working around the world, people who've never worked from home before. I thought it would be really interesting to ask them about some techniques that they use. And they've said a number of things. So I've just summarized it here. Plan the breaks and take these away from the screen. As I said before, I do find as well, this is very effective because if you don't take the breaks, I find I just drift off and I'm not focused. And also, if you don't take time away from the screen, I find that I just get a very bad headache. Clear the space for work versus home. I think this also means you close that door, you switch off. Also, your headspace, you stop thinking about work. Try to anyway. Try and use video as much as possible. My friend was telling me that this is really good to help motivate each other, and it keeps you connected with your colleagues. Plus, if you have video, he says that there's actually higher quality meetings and you have more focused staff, which is understandable. Be the first up in your house. Speaking to some of my friends who have children, if they get up at 5 and their child's up at 7, that means they have, let's say an hour and a half of time to do work before their child wakes up and requires some attention. And then if you have an LA dinner, let's say at 5 p.m. and then you have other commitments of family, then you could be able to potentially start your work at 7 p.m. Use adjustable chairs and 2 screens where possible. Make yourself comfortable. Use your ironing board to adjust the height of your desk if you like. Look at that lovely view. Try and work harmoniously with those in your house. So maybe one person makes dinner one night, somebody makes lunch. You've got to get on with these people because you're going to be in lockdown for a while. And you need to enjoy each other's company as well. And the final point really is be kind to you now more than ever, because you really need to. It's difficult times, unprecedented, and let's just all be kind to each other. So thank you very much for your time. I want to say thank you very much to SEO Joe Blogs. Unsplash are the photos that I've used, friends for their input for the final slide, and you for listening. I am on LinkedIn, so feel free to come and find me and connect with me. Any questions or feedback? I'm going to stop sharing this making the screen so big now so I can actually see what the questions are. So thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Some great tips there. So do we have any questions for Ruth Turnbull? So we've got some comments. Yogi said he will be using the ironing board.
It's a good one.
But just be really careful with your computer because it could slide.
Yes, well, yeah, this is, okay, so you can only really use the ironing board if you have a laptop and not desktop, because it wouldn't really work.
Yeah, no, I meant about if you have a laptop, but you just need to be careful. And also it can sometimes get quite hot. Okay, well, I think we just have some sort of nice comments, so that's great. And Arij and Marad's been talking about some. Claire likes your tip. IKEA are missing a trick, ergonomic ironing boards. So
they are. So if there's an increase of people buying ironing boards now, that I hope it's down to me.
You can get a referral fee, an affiliate fee.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you very much, Ruth, for being on the show today. So
thank you all very much.
Thank you. You can get hold of you on Ruth-Turnbull, or I've also been tweeting, putting my face. Yes, it looks similar to Ruth, but putting both our faces on Twitter, so you can contact her. So I'll pass over to Briony Gunson, who is joining us and has an interesting lineup, and then we have Sheri before we have a very quick break, and then we start our afternoon session or later evening session if you're over east, or very early session if you're over west. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jo. And what I have to share is actually really complements the awesome advice that Ruth's just given us. So I'm just going to share my slides. I'm assuming you can all see them.
Now, yes.
Yeah. Amazing. So yeah, so actually complements so well what all the amazing advice that Ruth has gathered. So my talk today is going to be about how we can look to try to stay in control no matter the circumstances. So thinking about ourselves, and Ruth touched upon things like mental health and well-being, as well as productivity. So I'll be actually giving some of the insights that underpin the psychology and the science behind how and why all that amazing advice that Ruth just shared, why that works, but looking at some of the sort of bigger picture view of how our minds work. So I am Briony Gunson, and my background is in SEO, so I've been in the industry for 10 years now. But over time, I have gone from optimizing websites to optimizing people. And my own experience with meditation was one where I was seeking out support for stress reduction, and then really loved it, got a lot from it. And I trained as a meditation teacher, and I'm now a certified mindset trainer as well. So really looking into the science and psychology of how the mind works, and then looking to try to apply that to our life as well. I'm also in the process of training to be a breathwork facilitator. So I do some work that more helps with like emotional regulation and a lot of like psychological and physiological healing. So I've really sort of started to branch out into other areas now. And previously I have worked for big brands, like I've worked 10 years agency side, and I've worked for big brands like Beko, Co-op Bank, and Mitsubishi. I was trying to think of all the brands. There's been a lot over the years. But my current clients around the sort of mindset work I'm doing is around, I work with the likes of WeWork, and I'm also providing meditation sessions for the NHS. And I have done work with mental health professionals providing this type of training. I also work with individuals, and I collaborate with businesses sometimes, providing support and training for their staff as well. Oh, and then I'm mentored by Bob Proctor. I forgot that this builds. So he is seen as one of the world's leading experts on human potential. So like what we're actually capable of. He's in his mid 80s now, and he's been doing this for 60 years. So I had the absolute honor of working with him, and essentially some of what I'll share today is a blend of insights from his experience, as well as other things taken from science and psychology throughout my training and studies. So then, staying in control, no matter the circumstances. Now, when we say the word control, that can, in my mind, it can sometimes feel a bit tense, like we're desperately trying to cling on. And when we say no matter the circumstances, I suppose it's recognizing that in life, there is so much we cannot control. And we are particularly aware now of how maybe so many things we either took for granted or just assumed were stable and reliable aren't. You know, so much of our world has been thrown into question. So when I talk about staying in control, it's not about sort of working harder or striving more or desperately grasping at things and trying to force everything back to how it was. It's understanding for yourself, like what can you control? And ultimately, that's only really yourself in terms of your thoughts and your feelings. And a lot of the amazing advice that Ruth just shared were practical tools and techniques for you to really manage your time, because we actually can't really, well, we can't manage time. We can only manage what we do with that time. So it's what we're doing, like our actions. But there was all sorts of advice there about our mental energy and our focus, because that mental energy, the reason why we feel tired at the end of all of those, all that screen time, is that we've had so much mental energy focusing on that. You know, our resources are depleted. So it's thinking about our energy in terms of our physical, emotional, mental energy, like how are we feeling in that regard? And just knowing that that's ultimately all we can control. So I'll discuss a bit more about some of the concepts behind this, so we can begin to understand that when we know how the mind works and how that influences our actions, just like anything in life, with greater understanding, we can start to get to grips with it a little bit more. I wanted to briefly touch on emotions as well. So Ruth mentioned about mental health, and as a society, we've got a sort of, we're really coming into our own now with understanding the importance of emotional regulation, and actually just the importance of emotions overall, particularly in the world of work. And there's this amazing TED talk by this doctor called Alan Watkins. It's only like 20 minutes long. Definitely, it's a quite an amusing one as well. So definitely recommend watching it. He talks all about emotional intelligence, and he makes a really important distinction, which I know for me, when I first watched this video, I was thinking, I don't think I'd ever actually distinguish feelings and emotions. Have you? So there's a subtle but important difference. So when we talk about emotions, that's like a set of composite biological signals within the body. They're also referred to as emotions. And in fact, the Latin for emotions, that's what it means. It means energy in motions is emotions. That's the origin of the word. So we're going to explain quite neatly like why this word is very interesting in a moment. But essentially, this is a biological signals, right? So the body is being triggered into some kind of typically movement, like fight, flight, or freeze. Maybe your pupils dilate, your palms might get sweaty, your heart rate goes up, blood starts moving to different places. These emotions are being triggered in order for us to do something, or something to happen within the body. Now, our feelings are the cognitive awareness, so our mind's ability to use a skill called interoception to basically go, there's stuff happening. Like I can feel like my tummy is like feeling, I've got butterflies in my stomach. I can feel my breath is getting faster. But often we're not actually consciously aware that this is happening. We may start to feel a bit unsettled, but actually we're not that skilled at being able to identify what are we really feeling. And as a society, we really suppress the expression of our feelings. And in work, we tend to strip them away. So you can feel okay, excited, maybe a bit frustrated and stressed or cross, and that's it. Like, and even the negative emotions, we don't want to see much of them. And what tends to happen is that we're not very well versed in exploring our emotions. And so some people have high emotional intelligence and are comfortable with that. Other people have less experience with it and so find it very uncomfortable. And so as a result, we end up with a big jumble of all these different people with maybe different emotional responses, different experiences, different journeys they've been on with their own mental health. We're all trying to work together. We're all having different experiences and everyone's dealing with things in their own way. So the sooner we can understand that we are all emotional beings, to have emotions, it's like to say you're not an emotional person is to say you're like not a breathing person. You know, it's a thing that happens within the body. And we want to learn how to, emotional intelligence is our ability to more clearly identify emotions within the body. So I'd like to invite you today to start to consider emotions like information. We can start to be more objective about our experiences and get curious. You know, where everyone watching this is likely involved in digital marketing, specifically SEO. And we love to use data to inform our decisions. And your emotions, that's information that your body is giving you about yourself, the situation. And so we don't want to reject it or ignore it. We want to get curious, like, what is there? And so that's a huge part of what I do is helping people with not only emotional regulation, but what are the thoughts triggering those emotions? So let's talk about that now. We've got here this cycle, and it's really highlighting how actually our thoughts trigger feelings, and then feelings actually move us into action. So say, for example, we see some kind of result or there's something happening externally. Very quickly, there's a whole bunch of thoughts that will get kicked up. And there's mental energy there because the neurons in the brain, that's like electrical energy happening. You've got neurons firing and wiring when we're taking in that information. Depending on your perception of those events and the types of thoughts they generate, all sorts of emotions will start to be triggered within the body. Say your boss sends you a message going, hey, we need to talk. And you're like, oh God. And so you may suddenly have a thought like, oh no, like you feel like, I wonder what this is about. Is it about that other time that, you know, some memory? And you may very quickly start to feel like some negative emotions. You may feel your stomach drop a little bit, and then your palms maybe start to get a bit chilly. And then you can feel a bit of tightness in the chest. And then you think, no, it's okay. I'm sure it's going to be fine. And we sort of yo-yo back between these things of trying to generate different thoughts. But if we are practicing on a regular basis, being anxious, being nervous, being concerned and worried, because maybe overarchingly we have like low self-esteem, then it's kind of challenging for us to authentically shift our thinking. And instead we're desperately slapping on positive thoughts onto probably negative feelings. And we can end up a real jumble then of all sorts of different emotions. And it's like we're not being coherent then. To use a website analogy, I guess it's like having a whole bunch of different content on different topics in different places. There's no coherent structure. So as an individual, all that thought energy is being scattered in amongst loads of different things. So we want to be aware of what thoughts are you thinking? What feelings is that generating? Because those feelings, we know that that's triggering the body into some kind of movement, you know, energy in motions, emotion, because ultimately the body is like the instrument of the mind. The body will execute whatever the mind dictates for it to do. So it's really important we have an understanding of this. So in summary for that cycle, thoughts cause feelings, feelings trigger actions, knowing that the body will just execute whatever the mind is telling it to do. And then the actions will cause some kind of reaction. So you may, with that message from your boss analogy, it might be that you then you think, oh God, I don't know what this is about. So you start panicking a little bit. You send back a bright and breezy email trying to sound like, yes, it's fine. And then you're secretly panicking. And maybe for the rest of the afternoon, your focus is scattered. You're trying to anticipate what it's about. Maybe you're starting to suddenly switch tasks. So you're no longer doing what you were doing. You're maybe focusing on something else that you think they're interested in. And then maybe you have the conversation with them later that day and it's just a gentle check-in and they had a question about your work from last week. And it's nothing to do with any of the thoughts that you had, But yet the result is that your whole afternoon was like thrown into chaos just through your imagination of what it could have been rather than what it actually is. And so we're seeing this at a mass scale right now because we've got really big things changing. And so as a result, that's triggering a hell of a lot of thoughts and all sorts of feelings. Now, to practice this type of self-mastery, as I would call it, it takes time and it takes practice. And it's all part of the human experience. And Ruth had said these are unprecedented times. So we do need to be kind to ourselves, but we also need to start to realize we are the master of our own destiny, and that our thoughts have a huge impact on basically the outcomes in our life. There's one more here. So essentially your reactions will then create results in your life. So you do start to see time and time again, there's probably the same issues or challenges will show up for you. That's a sign of some deeper thinking that's happening there, perhaps in the background, that you're not aware of. So to stay in control, ask yourself, what are your current thoughts about any circumstance? You can use this type of model. I've done it in workshops before where I get people to break it down. You write out the thoughts, you write out the feelings, you write out how that's affecting your action and your results. It's a really powerful exercise. I also wanted to touch briefly on something called the knowing-doing gap. Now, this is a psychological phenomena, which means that we struggle to effectively and execute and take action on the things we already know. So when we talk about staying in control, no matter the circumstances, well, right now people may be, so some people may have lost their jobs. Some people, their income may have been impacted. And although people recognize that they need to do something or they want to take action, because we're having a lot of negative thoughts that are triggering strong emotional feelings, we can end up demotivated, feeling a bit lost, feeling quite anxious. And that's not saying you're doing anything wrong or that you're weak. This is like, these are big things we're dealing with. But what is important is to go, okay, how can we shift out of that place? Because often people do have the answers and solutions, or what you need to do. But because we're so caught up in all of the drama unfolding around us, we're kind of paralyzed into inaction. So we're not even making good on the information we already have. And you see this all the time in organizations where people are just not doing what they know how to do. And it's not because people are lazy, or it's not because people aren't trying. Often there's like psychological blocks that are just stopping people from actually executing on what they know. So it's important to realize actually that's your subconscious mind as well that dominates most of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So unless your subconscious programming is in harmony with the thing you're trying to do, you might struggle. So basically, if you don't believe you can do something, you're probably going to struggle to do it. Or if you don't believe you're good at something, you're probably going to struggle to take action on it, even if you really want to. Because if deep down you believe you can't, then that's what's going to show up for you. So it's important to ask ourselves, when did you last upgrade, your belief system or your programming about who you think you are and what you're capable of? With everything that's happening right now, it's causing a big shift in terms of what people think is important in life, maybe your values, how you work. So now is an amazing time to upgrade, in terms of going, I don't want to think and feel this way anymore, or I want more of this in my life. Like, what are you going to carry forward into this new world, that's in the process of being created? So do make sure you ask yourself, are you utilizing all your skills and training to help you in this situation? It's not about beating ourselves up or saying you're not doing a good job. It's just more with that calmness of mind, and that it was mentioned about acceptance, like accepting the circumstances and going, how can I help me to get through this? And also, how can I draw upon the advice and skills of others to help me get out of a rut if I'm a bit stuck? Are you utilizing all your skills and training to support your decisions and actions? Because you know what you need to do. You do. Everyone on this call, without a doubt, will be highly skilled, extremely knowledgeable, and very intelligent. So trust in yourself. Know that you have everything you need to help you right now. So then, some tips on staying in control, because obviously we've introduced that thought, feelings, actions, reaction cycle, and also the idea of the knowing-doing gap. I'd like to break it into these areas. So attitude. So just being aware right now, in order to stay in control, it's just knowing like, actually, the only thing you can control is you. Let go of maybe what you felt was normal, or comparing yourself to either past you or other people. Like, let it go. Be kind to yourself. As Ruth said, these are unprecedented times. So give yourself permission to have that like loving attitude. Think about action. So what can you control? And then take action on those things. Always look to seek solutions as well. We need to be aware of the problems or the issues, but don't stay in that place. It's like if we were coming up with an SEO strategy for a client and all we did was highlight issues and problems and why something won't work, we know we're not going to get anywhere. So focus on knowing the solution, knowing the problems, yes, but really look to identify how you can come up with solutions to help yourself. Attention. Where is your attention, your mental attention most of the time? So you can look to actually audit your thoughts, just like you would audit a website. You know, you can either talk things through with people, which looks to objectify them a bit more, get them out of you, or you can write them out as well. That's a really powerful way to get more objectivity on what you're actually thinking. Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is a scientist who looks a lot into meditation, I've been to one of his workshops and I love his work. He says that you can't see the label if you're in the jar. So we can't often truly know the nature of our own thoughts because we're kind of lost in them all. So write them out. It's an amazing way to be objective. Think as well as about your whether you're being reactive in a situation. So whether you're being like you're suddenly being very reactive and emotional about a situation, and looking to try to bring that calmness in and see how you can instead respond. And with that, being responsible with your feelings and responsible with your actions. And finally, awareness. So being aware of your emotional state. As I said earlier with what Alan Watkins said, your emotions is just information. You know, it's really important. It's clues and information about who you are, your values, you know, what's important to you. So just do know that it's really healthy to express your emotions. It is not weak. We are all emotional beings. If you're not expressing them, that's not to say that that's also wrong. It's more about how and where we express them so that they're not bottled up inside of us. And so to feel your emotions, so to allow them to come out. I mean, I know I've had a damn few good cries over the last few weeks to get that emotion out. You know, it's fully expressing yourself with integrity. It's knowing who you are and not being afraid to be vulnerable, and obviously picking the right time and place and people to share that with. But it's a powerful and very healthy thing to do. And finally, just to highlight as well that we're living through what it was called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, although I don't know, you know, what this new era will be called now. But emotional intelligence in the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the top skill that employers want. So actually you expressing your emotions is you practicing becoming more aware of your different emotions and how you're actually feeling. There's something like 20,000 different emotions, which is crazy. I think we probably only maybe practice like 7 or 8, you know, so it's really starting to be aware of this whole other world that's out there and in a way in which we can express ourselves. So I'll finish on this quote from Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor. So this quote's a good 2,000 years old or so. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." So right now there's so much happening, and with a lot of compassion and understanding and patience, you know, and it's still unfolding, and it's okay to not be okay. And it's also okay to be okay. And we're figuring this all out together. We're all in it together, which I find deeply reassuring. So you're not alone, and we'll figure this out together. So that's it. So I'll take any questions, but also you can, just connect with me online. I'm doing lots of webinars and sessions with teams and individuals at the moment on a lot of this content. So yeah, just give me a shout if I can help you in any way.
Great. Thank you very much. That was really insightful. Loads of tips that you gave there. Thank you. We're just a little bit out of time, but
yes,
I will just have Sheri give her presentation. If we have a couple of minutes after, then we can take a few questions. I think Bob has a question for you about breaking the cycle between feelings, thoughts, behaviors, actions. But I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone that's joined so far, and thank you to Stuart, Ruth, and Brian for speaking, and also Sheri for being part in the studio with us. And I'll now pass over to Sheri to talk and present her really insightful presentation about diversity in digital. Over to you, Sheri.
Hi, guys. Just a second, let me just open my PowerPoint presentation. Just like that.
Okay, adding it to the screen.
Can you see it?
I think it's just coming in now. And thanks everyone for joining. It's great to see you. We will be back on after Sheri's talk for our afternoon session. Do you want to try sharing again, Sheri?
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
There we go.
Yeah, can you see
you.
it now?
Yeah, perfect. Great, I'll mute myself.
Okay, so hi guys, and thanks so much for joining Turn Digi Live today. I was delighted when Joe reached out and asked me to share my story as well as talk to you about diversity and inclusion. I'd like to start by sharing with you my journey into the world of digital marketing in this very short video. Unfortunately, you don't really get to feel or understand discrimination until you witness it yourself. As an Arab, headscarfed, Muslim woman who is a mother of 2 school-aged children with a university degree from Egypt, I certainly had all the stocks, all the odds stacked against me. But I knew that in order for me to succeed, I had to press harder, work like crazy, and find my own way. And hence, Digital Tulips was born, a small business to help other small and medium-sized businesses grow and be found online. After applying for what seemed like thousands of jobs back then when I was first beginning, it was pretty obvious that no one was interested in hiring someone like myself. But hey, even British-born applicants from ethnic minority backgrounds with degrees from British universities are not getting a fair chance. See, these are people like me, Middle Eastern and North African heritage, 90% more applications. But I get it, people feel safe when they're surrounded by familiar faces, right? We all have to agree that diversity and inclusion has been a hot topic. You see all these pictures around of, people waving hands, companies trying to embrace diversity one way or another. Even Google Trends shows a surge in search on diversity and inclusion. And I think the problem is that diversity is good for business. And I'm not just saying that because I'm from the minority people. Study after study sheds light on what diversity can bring to any business. However, the sad reality is people like me still do feel that they need to protect themselves from job discrimination. Companies are unfortunately trying to find minority candidates just so they can tick a box and be known to celebrate diversity, because everybody is, of course, worried about the flip side of diversity, which is discrimination. As the demographics of cities change, we need to adapt. Companies need to adapt. Of course, you can see diversity in companies, but there is a lot of work that needs to happen, especially as you go up the ladder into management. 55% of employees have witnessed or experienced discrimination in the workplace. 55%. And that is recent stats. I want you to take a minute to read these. About 12.5% of UK population are from the BAME community, but they hold just 6% of top management jobs. The problem is, if these minorities were able to progress through their careers, £24 billion could be added to the UK economy each year. And even when we do diversity in organization, it's still lacking in top management, and it's still the same also in the digital industry, where we find 88.8% of employees are from white ethnic groups. And when it comes to gender, women are taking up less than 40% of digital roles. The question is, have you witnessed or experienced diversity before? Can you please write yes or no in the messages on the side? And if you're too shy to share, I'm running a poll on my Twitter account, so please go there and type yes or no. Embracing diversity is very important because it's smart for business today and it's vital for your success tomorrow. Teams that are gender, age, and ethically diverse make better decisions up to 87% of the time. Diverse teams make better decisions and even lead to higher revenues. Embracing diverse backgrounds opens the door to better problem solving and innovation. If you have homogeneous teams, they will create the same products, and so revenues would be low. But imagine if you have a diverse community that come together in your organization and brainstorm, you'll get a product that is unique for all the population, and hence you will attract more people to your product and service, and so your revenues will increase. But although we see diversity, again, I'm stressing it's not going up that career ladder. Diversity in the workplace should just not be a tick in the box. It should just be part of diversity, But I'm not here to blame white privilege. In fact, white male leaders play a pivotal role in helping improve diversity within companies. A leader's job is to figure out what's it like for other people and make everyone have a positive experience. So I'm here so we can all work together in creating solutions. So I'm not a human resource person. So, however, based on my experience as an ethnic minority in digital, as well as extensive research the last 2 weeks, these are my 8 tips to a more diverse and inclusive teams in digital. And I think we have to start by checking your own bias. Start by examining your own bias, because we're not bad people, we're just human. No one is immune to bias. And the first step in addressing it is to recognize it. Step number 2 is to look critically at your hiring process. Look outside your walls and don't just hire someone that looks like yourself. The same goes for digital events and looking for speakers. You don't need to have the same regular speakers people are comfortable in seeing. You need to broaden out, like what Jo did today, and I thank her for that. Step number 3 is to build new connections with diverse communities. And here I'm talking about organizing network events to target diverse communities. Try to be proactive as a company. Here in London, 40% of Londoners are diverse. And so it's not very difficult to find diverse community to blend in and create sessions, in colleges and universities, even networking events, and just really shouting out so people can come together and speak to one another. Because at the end of the day, if you get to know us, we're really good people. We're not as bad as you think. Step number 4 is to re-examine the way we promote employees. And I'm stressing this because, people are doing a lot in diversity and companies are trying to embrace it, but we're not finding promoting employees is very fundamental, because people imagine if, they go into a company and they're employed, but they're not going up the ladder like their white counterparts, or like, they'll feel degraded. And so their productivity is going to get, diminished, I guess. So trying to reassess that, perhaps working with HR and creating ways where there's no bias in promotion. Because at the end of the day, yeah, it's true. We are all biased some way or another, but we really need to think about how we can work together to take this out of our mind when we're trying to promote employees. Step number 5 is to accommodate flexible roles to cater for different needs of individuals. We're in 2020, and with the lockdown, it has showed us that we can work very comfortably remotely as well. So whether you're talking about working in the office and adjusting your office space to help people, let's say, with disabilities, or maybe flexible roles for people with children to work flexibly, or remote working if for employees that live far away from the organization. A lot of things can be done to help and accommodate different people and their different needs. Number 6 is to acknowledge and to celebrate holidays of culture. I think this would be a great opportunity for teams to come together to celebrate their diversity in a fun way by embracing each other's holidays and cultures. Number 7 is to make it easier for people to participate in groups and networking. Perhaps holding events during working hours rather than after, or maybe, having your weekly hangout rather than in a pub, try a coffee shop, or maybe an activity-based setting instead, just so you can get more people to participate. And I want to end this, last but certainly not least, is, I think the most important tip I would give to anyone, and especially those of us from ethnic backgrounds, is to seek sponsors, not just mentors. If you really want to go, to get ahead and advance in your career, you need a sponsor. Mentors talk with you, sponsors talk about you behind your back in closed doors. A sponsor will champion you to advance in your career. According to research from the Center of Talent Innovation, 85% of women and 81% of multicultural professionals need this type of navigational support to figure out how best to succeed in the workplace. But often they don't receive it at the same regularity as men. So if you're an organization, maybe perhaps create a sponsorship programs where people can, actively have sponsors in your organization to sort of help them progress, in the career ladder. Whether we like it or not, the world has become a very small place. And I feel that we are stronger together, and I'm sure all of you would, share with me this concept. Diversity is everything about us that makes us who we are today. Thank you very much. And that's it.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Sheri, for sharing all those stats. As we said in the chat, that's shocking. From what you have seen, what you have personally experienced, all those applications, and also for what the other stats you got. So thank you for sharing all the information and highlighting it to everyone.
I think Joe,
I really hope that.
Yeah, I think the problem, Joe, is that it's not everyone wants to embrace diversity one way or another, but it's an inclusion, and I think that's what plays a major role, is including diverse people in everything. And I think that's something that people really have to think about and address, and addressing their own bias. Whether it's everyone is biased one way or another, and we might not feel it inside, but there's a really nice website by Harvard. I think it's like a kind of questionnaire that you can take to re-examine your own bias, and I would encourage everyone to go and have a look at it, just to see.
Yeah, well, that's it's definitely will be interested into seeing more about your sources and your presentation. You'll be sharing that on SlideShare, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. There was just a couple of questions, some statements. I think it's good from James saying that celebrating more holidays is also beneficial from a more positive environment. That's true. Briony said that she grew up in Hong Kong and they celebrate lots of different cultures. My sister and I grew up in many countries, as did Sheri, and we always celebrated different cultures. So I think sometimes if you're just in one country your whole life, nothing bad with that, of course, but you can get into a certain mindset. And I found quite a lot of discrimination myself, even just coming to England because of my accent. A lot of people thought I wasn't English and assumed that I was American and assumed I was acted in a certain way or didn't know certain things about English life. So, and that's me looking at the way I am. So there's another question as well from someone, Bob. Did he mention? I don't know where it is. Oh yeah, just a question about how would employing minorities improve your income and productivity? I think you were saying around the fact that people would be more motivated if people are in a job for a while. Then of course they see their promotions are not being taken seriously. Then of course become demotivated. But I'll pass over to you to answer that question.
I think that's a very good question, and I think a lot of people sort of brush it out because, if they hire people that looks like them, they feel more comfortable because at the end of the day, they're like them. It's like they're looking at a mirror, so they have the same ideas. But imagine if you employ somebody that doesn't look very similar to you. They'll bring up their own ideas, their own cultures. And when you bring these ideas and cultures into the pool, you create more creativity and more innovation simply because other people have different perspectives from the world than you do. And hence, this goes into building our digital products and services because our end users are diverse. If you have like-minded individuals in the beginning of the pool trying to create a product and service, they'll probably cater for the people like them. Let's say for example, AI. AI is a big deal at the moment, and a lot of talking about how AI is not very diverse, and people are really scared because the people who are developing AI are from from the white background, so the way that they speak is different. And so if you're going to talk about somebody from, let's say, an Asian minority or Black minority, the way they speak is different, and so perhaps the products will not really recognize as in voice recognition because the people building AI are from just from the white people, so their accents are very similar. However, you need to embrace both forms of accents and people in order to create a product or service that caters for everybody, and especially in digital, obviously.
Yeah, well, I was surprised about the stats about digital. I thought it was more open than that.
Very recent stats.
Yeah, no, I think they're very interesting. I just want to say thank you to our speakers. Sorry, someone's drilling in the house. For taking the time to be with us today. We have another session starting in 10 minutes. It's our first afternoon session. I'll put it in the chat. But just appreciate everyone's time. It's more precious than ever now. So thank you very much, Stu and Ruth, for dialing in from Sydney. Stuart, Melbourne, Ruth. It was nice to be able to share the stage with my sister. I haven't seen you in person for over a year, but it's good to see you in like this. And thank you very much, Sheri, for joining, and Briony, some great tips as well. So I'll just put the chat.
Thank you.
I'll put this. If you guys actually go onto YouTube, you can see. If I go on now, it might echo. So everyone that's watching, please look at the second video of the day and tune in then in about 8 to 10 minutes. Thank you very much. And thanks, Zul, for dialing in from Indonesia.
Thank you. Bye, Zul. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone, for being here today. It was great. Everyone really liked it. We had a record number of 50.